Yay, I'm live. Technical difficulties. I apologize for that. I don't have the strongest bandwidth where I live. But here I am. We are talking about part 2 today of accessing the quantum field of mind. And I'm going to share this in the group. If you're jumping on, say hello. And let me know if you watched day 1. Raquel and Courtney, I do believe that you did watch day 1. Okay, posting and ascending Earth Creatrix. I'm in the right group. I'm on the right page. All is good. Hello. Thanks for waiting for me. This will be a talk worth waiting for. Got my chlorophyll water, which I pretty much drink all summer long. Totally helped me out when we had very, very smoky skies. With all of the fires, especially around Yosemite. We had fires close to Mount Whitney, fires north, fires south, fires east. So my liquid chlorophyll is what totally was able to help me breathe so I could still go hiking. Hi Allison, here I am. Facebook wouldn't let me jump on live. I don't know why. But I'm here. Chlorophyll and barley. I drink toasted barley tea. I love that. I love the taste of that. And excited for this. I missed a couple spots in part 1, so still going back later. Okay, Courtney, cool. It's also on my YouTube channel. So it is now on my Abundant Intuitive podcast, part 1. Collapsing Timelines and Accessing the Quantum Field of Mind, part 1 is on my YouTube channel at Catherine Massell. It is on my podcast as well, The Abundant Intuitive, as well as here in Ascending Earth Creatrix as a replay. And of course, if you're watching from my business page, it's up in the feed and the replay too. So I spent a lot of time last night. Hi Susan, hi Raquel, I think Svetlana is here too. Hey ladies, hello, hello, hello. Hi y'all, thanks for watching. And I am wet again. I had a client ask me the other day, like, why are you always wet when you go live? Why is your hair always wet? I have 2 reasons why. Well, in the summertime, maybe 3 reasons. The first reason, if it's summertime, so this is a seasonal reason, I go paddleboarding because I live 4 blocks from the beach. So I'm either paddleboarding, but usually I shower before I do these lives because number 1, it's very grounding and I'm all about grounding. And I couldn't communicate these things to you very clearly and succinctly if I'm not grounded. And also, I do my best thinking in the shower. So there you go. That's the answer. If any of you have been wondering that, like, why are you always wet? She was sweet. She tried to ask it in the best way possible without insulting me. I'm not insulted. So we are talking about here in part 2 of this talk. There might be a part 3. We'll see how today goes. I already think I know how part 3 is going to go, and I'm glad, Allison, that you're here because I know that you study this and you study neurology and you are all about studying pathways of the brain and connections of the brain. So your questions are very, very welcome. And any prompt for clarity in what I'm talking about is also welcome. That goes for anyone here. You got questions, ask away. Because again, like I said yesterday in the live, I know how I think of things and compartmentalize things and understand it with the intellectual mind and understand it in the heart, but I don't know how you guys receive it. So the best way for me to get a glimpse about how you receive things is to ask questions, okay? I assumed as much about the showers. Okay, so if you didn't watch part 1, it's okay to pick it up here, but just know that I'm not going to go into too much detail that I already covered in part 1. So do go back and talk about this, but I will very quickly summarize what we talked about yesterday. So yesterday I was talking specifically about collapsing timelines and what happens with collapsing timelines and how that can help us access the quantum field of mind, what that means. And the quantum field of mind If I didn't say it yesterday, I'm saying it right now. This is the God creator mind. This is source creator mind, okay? Let's see. Susan says, so I have a question. I know of structures, same as timelines. No. Similar. So when we talk about structures, let's just say there are certain energetic structures that are upheld as part of our understanding in 3D that are, let's see, what would be a good example of a structure? The way we access information, the way we compartmentalize and access information. We understand that, we learn things through behaviors. We, as human beings, we love categorization. It's how we add meaning to our lives, is through categorization, okay? So structures will often collapse as part of collapsing timelines. When you're talking about timelines, you're actually talking about a whole, a larger structure as a whole that encompasses or encapsulates smaller structures, okay? So the timeline, if you think about it in terms of what it can hold as far as beliefs, what it holds as behaviors, what it holds as the way we look at power, who holds power, what is power, what is source, what is God, what is creator. We're talking about, in certain timelines, it supports a dimensional reality of the way of categorizing things. All of that will hold structures within it, if that makes sense, okay? Allison says, the biggest thing that kept coming at me was the idea of subconscious and ascension. We cannot overcome the subconscious, but what if we're not overcoming it? To me, the process of ascension is a rapid unveiling of subconscious to change it and make it a more useful subconscious program. Trying to keep this short in the comments. Yes, Allison, absolutely, and I'm totally on board with that definition. And so I'm still struggling and wrestling with this idea of how to explain, how to give the subconscious a higher vibration. So it's not that we're overcoming it, because when I talked yesterday in the live about, we have this feeling of, if we're going to make this jump from 3D to 5D, that because the subconscious is so assigned to lower realms of consciousness, we equate that. That's not necessarily so. It has a purpose, which in terms of our survival is a very, very high purpose. But it's like giving the subconscious a different set of jobs to do, a different structure within to function, okay, which is of an elevated vibration. So I'm going to talk specifically about how we're making that transformation and one of the ways to understand this bridge of what's happening. Because we often think that when we go into a 5D timeline and we're jumping from 3D to 5D, that the subconscious is not going to go with us because it's so equated with like lower energy. But how could that be? We're taking all aspects of us with us, and we're not going anywhere. And I talked about this yesterday in the live, so please understand that jumping the timeline from 3D to 5D is, you're not going anywhere. It's not like, boop, I'm here, and then boop, I'm over there. That's teleportation. I'm talking about 5D as an increased energetic that we are slowly upgrading, or actually very quickly upgrading in our frequency to be able to step in and out of 5D all the time. Many of us are already doing it. Correct, Allison, that's what I'm saying. It has to go with us, otherwise we die. But what I'm saying is, a lot of people think when they think about ascension that that's the part we don't take with us, because that's not possible of ascension. It can't possibly be of a higher vibration, and we equate it with so many lower things like holding on to fear or blame or loss or sorrow or grief, things that we associate with the lower end of the emotional spectrum. We often correlate that with the subconscious just holds on to that stuff and it's not possible to do anything else. Wrong. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the subconscious is ascending right along with every other part of you. And what I'm asking here, and why I want to do these talks, and why I love these questions, is because we're going through a process of reasoning this out And I'm very aware that we're using the subconscious mind and our tracking of what we have been and what we have known and what is to be able to reason this out. But this is what we're all just talking this out, right? Trying to make sense of it, because it is happening. We are experiencing an ascension in all parts of self, all aspects of self. There is no part that we leave behind except for the collapsing timelines that hold the fear, the grief, the loss, and the sorrow. Indeed, the energies that are not supported in 5D, which are all those things that I just mentioned. So the subconscious must ascend because it must come with us. Otherwise, we are nothing. And we have no way of, because the subconscious, because it is so wired strongly with survival, okay? How can we start thinking of surviving, even if it's in a new, elevated, expanded way? How can we even think about or encapsulate the idea of surviving without the subconscious? Right? A well-developed subconscious is what increases intuition. I have to read from my desktop. Inability to access realms that are invisible. Indeed. So that's what I'm getting at, and that's why I'm so glad that you're here, Allison. Okay. We're on the same page. Yay! And please, anyone who's got questions, please, please, please. This is really deep and I'm drifting off. We'll stay with it though. And it's okay, because I'm going to give you some ways to try to, let's just say, make sense of what I'm talking about here. So the way I like to teach or talk about things is, I might talk about some pretty nebulous out there concepts, but I'm always going to give you something that will help you to kind of cement it, so that it lands with you now. So please do stay with me, okay? Because I will give you something. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So, accessing the quantum field of mind. I mentioned yesterday that the way I perceive the quantum field of mind is this vast consciousness grid that connects you with the all that is the all that is, okay? So, this is no different than the quantum fields of the universe, of the quantum fabric of the universe. There is no difference between that which exists in your mind as the quantum field of mind and that which exists as the quantum field of the universe. The last frontier in science, I truly believe, is finding more ways to correlate the truth of this, okay? So stay with me here, because I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff today, because I spent most of last night trying to figure all this stuff out and figure out ways to talk about it. And yes, my Friday nights are that exciting. So the quantum field of mind then is the God creator mind. It is the source mind, okay? So yesterday I talked a little bit about, accessing the higher mind, okay? In ways that we understand accessing the higher mind, let's just say a good example is using the transpersonal chakras. So the transpersonal chakras, literally, they start really at the crown, because the crown chakra is the beginning of the stellar gateway. And the stellar gateway, if you could imagine it, if it took up physical space, it would be like a column of energy that connects you with the galactic you, okay? So you have your soul star chakra, you have your galactic chakra, you have your causal chakra, which is a really interesting bridge to talk about, and I might need to do a whole other live about that. And the universal chakra. And there are more transpersonal chakras, but those are the 4 that I like to work with, and for all intents and purposes are great for talking about what we're talking about right here. So even accessing those transpersonal chakras and activating them, opening them up so that you have more of an expanded sense of your God consciousness, it's still a filter. It's still a vehicle to deliver the God consciousness to you. It's not a full merging with God consciousness yet. It's still a filter. It's still a vehicle for delivery, if that makes sense. And it's wonderful to work with the transpersonal chakras, and it's incredible because it helps you to understand the gateway or the bridge to fully accessing, embodying, merging with God, source, creator, quantum field of mind, consciousness. Yes? Okay, sounds like a party to me. Ellison, I could see you and I hanging out on a Friday night and talking about this stuff, so just putting that out there. So if we're talking about the higher mind, we're still talking about something that is a filter. We're still talking about something that is that kind of bridge or pathway or channel that allows us to glimpse what it's like to access more of the God self, more of the creator self, more of the source self, and free to understand it. But it's still a filter. You guys with me so far on that? Okay. All right, cool. Courtney's getting it. Allison says one day. It is heavy, yes, Tammy, but stay with me here. Stay with me here, okay? So what's happening when we are accessing, let's just say, the higher mind, and we're using this filter, it is still this duality that we are struggling with. So when I'm talking about the quantum field of mind and truly accessing God, creator, source mind, we are in non-duality, okay? But the paradox of understanding this is that in order to bridge our consciousness to grasping what non-duality really means, we have to kind of explain it and talk about it and contrast it with duality. Because our minds and our bodies are still here in 3D, and we understand duality very, very strongly here. And we're also doing things to enforce our duality. So this is where we get into the subconscious mind and where it's starting to make that bridge, where we're starting to reconcile the fact that here we are, we're still operating with this, I talked about yesterday, that 90% of our behaviors, the way we look, feel, compartmentalize, frame our world, is dictated by 90% of the subconscious or more, okay? So you went on a rant about this yesterday, and I had another one of my friends go on a talk about this, about cognitive behaviors and accessing the subconscious mind in a new way too. So this is on people's minds, which is great, because the more we talk about this, the more we get conversations going about this, the more we can try to figure out what the heck's going on and use this as a tool, right? So we are still creating these behaviors that are allowing us to be in duality. And some of those large part of those behaviors, if you believe that 90% of what runs the show is your subconscious, a lot of them are self-negating behaviors rather than self-affirming behaviors, and it's simply based on programming. Because the subconscious is really about programming and patterning, so that we can be creating a normal to bring validity to our reality. So the subconscious has a job to do, and that is to translate ideas into reality. It is to validate the truth, with a lowercase t, of our experience to help us understand what reality is, quote unquote. Because reality is very subjective. But that is very subjective in duality terms. Because then if you're talking about duality and you're talking about subconscious and what anchors or tethers our truth and our reality to us, there is truth which is very subjective to me, to you. You have a different truth than I do. She has a different truth than you do. It's truth with a lowercase t, but the truth with a capital T that we're accessing when we access the quantum field of mind, which is non-dual, is truth with a capital T, meaning there is one truth. So we're constantly wrestling with this idea of what is truth. Well, then what is God? What is source? What is creator? What is the one? What is the one consciousness that ties it all together? And is this kind of undisputable, and yes, at this place, unfathomable truth. But it doesn't mean we can't begin to start thinking about how to access it. And it doesn't mean that we don't, that it's like a futile attempt to try to figure out what this truth is, because this is what we're being called to do, and this is certainly how the subconscious, in its role and its very important job in our overall consciousness, is being given to do at this time. We're meant to upgrade the subconscious so we can finally get to even understanding what this place is and figuring out ways to access it. Okay. So if we are bringing the subconscious along on this ascension journey, what does that look like? How does that translate? How does that shake out? So if you believe in the idea of planetary ascension, you probably wouldn't be following me at this point if you don't. Or maybe you're still curious about what it means. So I mentioned before, we're not going anywhere. We are accessing a higher vibration. Planet Earth is ascending, meaning it is accessing a higher vibration. It is creating a whole new earth grid. And I have a whole Reiki modality about this if you want to know that and be able to practice that. So this new earth grid that's forming is upgrading everything on the planet. And because we have a very strong resonance that we share with Mother Earth, we are of her, she is of us, we are ascending right along with her, meaning we are accessing higher vibrations of self. All aspects of self are ascending. Nothing gets left behind. As I mentioned yesterday, what gets left behind are the collapsing timelines that hold the energies of fear, loss, chaos, blame, grief, resentment, pain, sorrow. Those energetics are not supported in 5D. They're not supported in anything beyond 4D, actually. Okay? So the subconscious goes with us too. So we are accessing a higher vibration of the subconscious, giving it a sacred job to do. Okay? If you believe, as I mentioned yesterday, that your subconscious controls 90% of the show, which may be a belief that is actually entrenched in 3D reality too, but I'm not going to get into that here because that's a whole different conversation. Let's just say, let's talk about two parts of the subconscious because it'll help you understand a little bit more about what's going on. So we have the reptilian brain, which is just purely wired for survival, okay? It's all about survival. It controls mechanisms in the body that allows us to survive. It is a part of you that does not learn, okay? That's the reptilian brain, okay? Allison says, old pattern, individual survival, greed, fear, selfishness, new pattern, collective survival. Yes, altruism. Yes, cooperation, love. Indeed, absolutely. Those are the differences, right, between 3D and 5D. The emotional brain is where we are talking about really having that bridge to understanding quantum field of mind. This is going to be that part of the subconscious that will ascend, okay? And we're not really leaving the reptilian brain behind, but it's just the reptilian brain is not capable of learning. The subconscious most definitely learns, but the reptilian is that part that is like motor functions, it's survival, it's stuff like that, okay? The emotional brain learns, is what I'm saying. And this is the part that we are accessing when we are talking about that bridge that helps us to understand the subconscious's new role in helping us to move into the quantum field of mind. Okay? This is where we're accessing infinite potentiality. This is where we can feel the expansion. Okay? This is where we feel the expansion and we can grasp the essence of it, even if we can't see it. We don't have to. Because the emotional brain learns how to feel and glean information, gain wisdom through feeling, through essence. And if you've heard me talk before, what is the core component of 5D? Essence. Essence is everything. Feeling is everything. It is that bridge. So that emotional part of the brain that does learn, that subconscious part of the brain that learns, which is the emotional brain, is our bridge to understanding this infinite potentiality of what can be. Okay? And moving out of this idea in the subconscious that is really firmly entrenched in, I frame what can be based on what is and what has been. Okay? It's not just learning in the way we think of learning. Okay, does that make sense, Allison? Yes. Yes. So we can have this emotional connection. And we can learn with the emotional brain through something that I think, when I really started thinking about the use of affirmations, which I shared with you in Heal, Awaken, Align Bootcamp. So in the course that I teach, that is for spiritual entrepreneurs who are wanting to bring their business from 3D into 5D, I teach about affirmations. AFFORMATIONS, as opposed to affirmations. Now, the difference is that with affirmations, you're saying a statement in the positive, and you are saying something that is like, I am rich, okay? I am abundant. Okay, so we go through saying all these affirmations, and nothing shifts. We don't feel anything from that, and if we do, it's usually like, I'm not abundant. Where do you see that? I look around and I see a negative in my bank account. I see a pile of bills on my kitchen table that I owe. So the problem with affirmations is when we say them, we don't really believe them, right? We're not really drinking the Kool-Aid there. We want to think we are, and we want to think affirmations work, but they really don't. But affirmations, why they're so interesting and why they can help so much is because, well, let's talk about specifically. An affirmation is a statement of something you would like to be true in your life. So for example, I gave you the classic affirmation, I am rich, okay? But the problem is many people will say, yeah, sure, hardly, okay? We don't believe it, okay? That means you don't believe these positive statements you're telling yourself. Our subconscious is not wired to accept statements that we don't believe are true, okay? But an affirmation, and this is why this is an interesting bridge to start working with and like training the subconscious brain to ascend, okay? The emotional part of brain that learns to ascend. An affirmation is an empowering question that assumes that what you want is already true or has already happened. It's already been realized. So let me give you an example. So in this case, instead of saying, I am rich, you would then affirm, A-F-F-O-R-M, instead of affirm, why am I so abundant in so many ways? So here's what happens. In your subconscious brain, you have this kind of, it's like an embedded presupposition factor. It presupposes things to be true, because remember what the subconscious brain does. It is constantly trying to translate ideas into reality. So something interesting happens when you form a question like this. And by the way, you're using affirmations all the time, except we're using it in self-negating ways. Why am I so stupid? Why do I always forget my car keys? Why do I always leave my phone somewhere? Why do I never charge my phone? Why am I always stuck in traffic? So we're always using affirmations all the time, but again, we're using it in these self-negating ways. It's all about self-affirming, okay? And self-affirming is our gateway to getting out of duality and getting into the non-dual God, source, creator mind, the quantum field of mind. So I think that using affirmations is a bridge for us to start understanding how this happens. So using your brain's embedded presupposition factor, meaning it presupposes things, your brain is programmed to search for answers to questions. This is what it's doing all the time, all day long. It's sorting through data, fine levels of data, to search for meaning and to search for a story, to create a normal, to create a program, to help you believe what is comfortable or familiar or right for you. Okay, it's constantly searching for that. So your mind starts to search for the answer to your new question, which is, why am I so abundant in so many ways? Or why does abundance flow to me in so many ways? Okay? So your mind starts to search for the answer to this new question, which causes the mind to focus on what is right with you and everything that's going right and what you have, rather than what is wrong and with what you lack. Okay? So here's where this gets even more interesting. If you believe that you are source creator now, that you have the ability to create everything that you look out and see has been created through a thought and a feeling, and then in behaviors to enforce it, create the action so that it becomes real and manifest on the 3D plane. If you believe in that, as I do, that we create everything, that we are creators, we are the master builders of our experience, we are the creators here, okay? But we haven't really fully embraced yet or made the bridge that we are source. Some of us think that those are two different things. It's not at all. But here's how we start to compartmentalize that. So if you start using these affirmations and you start understanding why this starts to give the subconscious a higher elevated job to do, rather than search for things that validate self-negating behaviors, it starts searching for things that are self-affirming behaviors. It starts creating self-affirming realities in your environment. So think about that for a second. Subconscious is kicking and screaming at getting this info coming in. It's okay. It's okay. That's why I'm going to do a couple more talks about this. And that's also why you should go back and listen to this, okay? So I think that these are excellent pattern interrupters. Because when you think about the subconscious and the emotional brain and the fact that it learns, how do we learn in general? Through repetition, right? Over and over and over and over again until it gets drilled in and it becomes part of our reality. What is our accepted reality and the truth with a lowercase t for us, correct? So it's the same kind of thing that we're doing when we use something like affirmations. We're training the brain to look for all the things that are right and aligned with the things that we are calling forth and are self-affirming in our environment that allows us to feel like I'm in more control. I am source creator. I create everything I see. And the good thing is I'm moving away from these self-negating behaviors that are keeping me in duality and moving towards more self-affirming behaviors. But I'm not only just engaging in self-affirming behaviors by asking these affirmations, my subconscious mind is helping me move into more creative ways and opening up creative channels so that I'm creating this reality. Think about that for a minute. I know that's big. So go ahead and ask any questions. I want to take a pause here and answer questions. I do have a couple more things to talk about. These are excellent pattern interrupters, affirmations, that help us not only stop the emotional brain, that part of the brain that has learned self-negating behaviors for so long, but then creating new self-affirming behaviors right then and there. It's like I'm always talking about, when we do a clearing and releasing, we create an energetic void right away. So we want to fill it up right away with what we just healed and cleared. We have left a void. We have left a black hole. We get to fill it up then with what we want. So doing something like using affirmations really, really helps. Okay, so if you want to read more about affirmations, this is something that was developed by a man named Noah St. John. And he has a book called The Book of Affirmations. You can get it on Amazon, okay? And it feels much better. And so what did I talk about is that bridge to 5D, its essence. So if already when you say, instead of I am rich, and you get like zero zilch in response to that in terms of a feeling, except for this self-negating behavior that you've learned that provides you with a feeling of, well, I don't feel abundant. I don't feel abundant at all. I don't feel rich. I got so many bills to pay. I don't even know how I'm going to pay rent this month. And you come up with all, the subconscious is very good at this, coming up with all of these reasons to validate why you feel that way. But when you start asking affirmations and saying, well, why am I so abundant in so many ways? It stops the subconscious, that emotional part of the brain that learns, in its tracks and starts searching for data in your immediate environment, usually through the feels. Right away, it already feels more expansive. So when you say, why does abundance flow to me so easily in so many ways? Say that to yourself right now. Why does abundance flow to me in so many ways? Why is it so easy to access means of surprise income? Let's just say something fun like that. Why does it feel so easy for me to access greater levels of income? Why does it feel so easy for me to be happy? That feels open and expansive, doesn't it? Now say, I am happy. I am abundant. I am rich. Check into the feelings when you are saying these things and go through that kind of checklist of, where do I feel it in my body? Do I really believe that? Pay attention to the thoughts that come in right away when you say those things on either side of it, whether you say the affirmations or the affirmations. This is a really good exercise that I do with you when I teach Heal, Awaken, Align Bootcamp. And we're going to do even more of it around this in the next one. So these are excellent pattern interrupters from when the brain is on autopilot, looking for evidence in the external environment to validate lack. Okay? Sadly, this is the default setting for many of us, is to validate lack, right? Feels much better, Courtney says. Yes. Okay. So when we're in this feeling space, we say the affirmations, like even if we don't accept it yet as truth, as part of our truth, that it's validating our reality, it still feels expansive, and that is the gateway for having it become truth. Accessing more of our joy is where we create aside from, it's where we create in the God source mind instead of in a place of duality, okay? It's a lot to talk about. Okay, but that's how we establish that emotional connection with the emotional brain and teach it how to occupy a higher energetic. Remember, the emotional brain is part of subconscious that learns, okay? This makes so much sense because an affirmation doesn't feel truthful at times. Yeah. And it oftentimes puts us right into this trigger mode where we start looking for all the reasons why it isn't true, right? And that's why affirmations, I mean, I gotta tell you this. So I remember this lady, she was teaching a manifesting course and how to manifest more money. It's like something like manifest $15,000 in 7 days or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And it was like a free thing that you could get from her. And I was like, I want to see what that's about. But her whole thing was about writing your statements, your affirmations, like 500 times. So guess what I did? And what I'm sure most people did with this. They found 500 reasons why those affirmations weren't true. 500 different and creative ways to validate your lack. That's all I came away with. And I laughed at it for being like, having it be like so stupid. I'm like, that doesn't change anything. Because it's not going to course correct in those places where you feel the lack. It's not going to correct the stories that you hold on to around money. It's not going to correct the feelings that you have about people that do have money. Right? It's not going to address any of that shit. And it was also like, didn't teachers make kids do that when they were like crappy in school and they disrupted the class? They had to write something on the blackboard like 500 times. I'm like, how is that empowering? I felt like I was being punished. So it's very hard to learn and program the part of the brain that learns, the emotional brain, to adopt new behaviors if it doesn't feel empowering, if it doesn't feel open, if it doesn't feel expansive, because that's our bridge, how we understand now. How do we begin to access this quantum field of mind, okay? So then I went down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper, so stay with me here, because I want to talk about this last part. And then if there's questions, I will answer them. I just want to make sure. I can't read all my comments. Just found an infographic that shows how future imagining, and past recollection light up the same parts of the brain. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about, and that's another live. We can't imagine a future without a framework from the past. Yes, absolutely. And that is true to a certain degree. But the limits of our imagination and what we think can be are also tethered to what has been. So if we're not fully upgrading the operating system that is telling us what has been and what is, if we're not upgrading that, we're also not correlating that with an upgrade in our ability to imagine new ways of being, if that makes sense. But I found some interesting stuff on the imaging of the brain and the parts of the brain that light up, because this is why I truly feel, and why many scientists I think feel, that the mind is the last frontier of exploration, because there's so much we don't understand, just like there's so much we don't understand about the universe. But I think that there's a quantum fabric that links the mind and the universe, and that there is no separation from the two, and that is our encapsulation of source in understanding how those mesh together. But please share that if you can, Allison. I would love to see that. All right. So I want to talk about this last part. So what is another thing that keeps us from fully opening up to positive outcomes in the emotional brain? And something I kept coming back to again and again and again, and I was meditating on this last night, what it really is hanging on to this illusion that we must suffer, okay? That suffering is part of our existence. Think about it. Think about it. How much do you have this drilled into your consciousness that suffering and struggle is part of the human condition? That in order to attain a closer connection with God, there has to be a suffering or struggling in order to be in the good grace and the bosom of God, of Creator, of Source. And that what we've been taught in school what we've been taught in certainly organized religion, certainly Christianity, certainly Judaism, that we must suffer and struggle in order to be closer to God. And that inherent in our struggle and suffering is how we become greater. It's how we become better. It's how we get even close to being God, but we can never truly be God because we're human and we suffer, and God doesn't suffer. So think about how limiting that illusion is that we hold on to, and think about how much we hold on to and frame our perspective here in our human experience based on this idea, this illusion of suffering. And if we're not agreeing to fully release ourselves from this identity as humans, as we suffer, I am human, I suffer. If we're not fully ready to release that identity, and because if you think about it this way, if you think about how much of your identity is entrenched in that, in this idea of suffering, if you release that fully, if you allow the subconscious to release that fully, who are you then? Okay? That's very troubling for many of us. So this is what we're wrestling with. This is what we're battling against. These are the stumbling blocks to understanding God creator mind and embodying source creator mind, the quantum field of mind. Who are we if we don't suffer? This is what sets us apart from God. And in that is what concretes this sense of duality. We are someone that we are human, we suffer. But if you are accepting fully, and this is why it causes such a rift in our consciousness, if we are accepting fully that we create every aspect of our life, we create every aspect of reality, we are the master builders of our experience, period, the end, no exceptions, then inherent in that is that you are creator, you are source. But if you're holding on to this idea that, okay, I can have these things, but I have to suffer or overcome something, whether it's a tragedy, you have to feel loss, you have to feel grief, you have to feel sorrow, that duality is what is keeping you stuck and not allowing you to get on the other side and understanding, embodying God's source mind, the quantum field of mind, and using the quantum field of mind as the vast womb of creation that it is. Okay? It is literally the fertile ground of everything that we would create. So we have this duality of self-negating behaviors and beliefs that are part of I must suffer. That's a lot to take in. And I know I'm talking about big stuff here, but I really want to give you stuff to think about. So if we are suffering in order to be in the grace and bosom of God, if we are accepting that belief from, religion, from our parents, that we have to suffer. I mean, if you're like me, I grew up with parents that, nothing comes easy, you have to suffer, you have to struggle for it. Life is not easy. Life is a hardship. And if you grew up believing that like I do, it's really creating this rift in your consciousness. Okay? Part of our rift in this, and a big part of overcoming the last stumbling blocks of accessing the quantum field of mind is this. Is because we've created so much identity around suffering and struggle, we're also terrified of letting go of the current suffering because it's so familiar to us, because, hello, subconscious brain, reptilian brain, that we're going to enter into a whole different new way of suffering. So do you see the paradox in that? So we talk ourselves out of our own expansion. We talk ourselves out of our own ascension process because of something like this. Because we are stuck in this paradox of duality and thinking that if I've defined myself, or I have this identity of someone who suffers, someone who struggles, and I think, okay, well, it's a really good idea to think about, like, there could be more. I could be expanded. I could be going into a 5D timeline where I'm leaving grief and sorrow and loss behind, and I'm fully embodying, merging with, becoming one with the quantum field of mind. Learning that will be a new way of suffering. But you're not necessarily learning it anymore once you're there. You're just there. It's a way of being. It just is. I know this is big stuff, but it's really important to start thinking about these things and talking about these things, because what I see happening so much is that when we talk about this process of ascension, we're only talking about, like, you know, ascending in our spirituality and like learning greater tools of you know, bringing our gifts, our intuitive acumen up to a greater degree and things like that. And we're leaving out the mind. All that stuff is important too. But you have to understand, it's all aspects that go along with you. All aspects of who you are being upgraded. All parts of you are entering into a higher energetic. And if we keep thinking that the mind is this lower thing that stays right where it is, we are going to have such massive growing pains, bigger than we already do, with this ascension process. So it's really important to start thinking about this stuff and start creating this bridge in your behavior by using things like affirmations, because it's really going to help you understand how you can access a higher part of the subconscious mind and give it a new program to run. A higher, elevated, more expanded vibration program to run. Courtney says, this is kind of, let me get back to your comment here. This is kind of the story of my year, managing the inner conflict between the attachment to suffering and the desire to be separate from it. Okay. So you have 2 tools to use here. I'm going to leave it here. This is a major key to easing the integration process. It is. And sadly, something that a lot of people are leaving out when they talk about ascension, how the mind is ascending, how the subconscious is ascending. Because it is ascending too. All parts of you are. So it's just great to get this conversation going and start reframing the subconscious. Giving it a better job to do. To help us along on this ascension process. So you have the affirmations. So I'll give you the link for Noah St. John's book, the Book of Affirmations, and a little thing to help you understand what affirmations are a little bit better, a link to an article. And also I want to give you something that is really, really instrumental in helping you ease this process of suffering and understanding how to let go of suffering. So a little while ago, I did the Green Terra meditation. And I'm going to find the link for you right now. And this is a free meditation. It's on my YouTube channel. I think it's also on my podcast. But let me just see if I can find it and put the link up here. Are there any questions at all while I'm looking for this meditation? I know this is big stuff, guys, so thanks for sticking around. Thanks for hearing me out. I hope this has planted some seeds within you and will help you to start thinking about this stuff in more expanded ways. I don't think I can find my Green Terra meditation. Let me see if I can. I think I have it on my podcast. Either way, I'm going to find the Green Terra meditation for you. Green Terra is one of the ascended masters who have decided to come forth at this time to help us with the ascension process. There are many manifestations of Terra, the goddess Terra. Green Terra helps us to understand eco-ascension. So it helps us to understand that unique symmetry and shared resonance that we have with Mother Earth. That because the Earth is ascending and certain things are happening to Mother Earth, we're going to feel them here in very acute, very intense ways. And so when we are able to release this kind of this suffering in Terra, any manifestation of Terra helps you to release the ego identity we have with suffering and the illusion of suffering, but in a way that it helps us to understand the ascension process at the same time, if that makes sense. And, you know, the release of suffering that even Mother Earth is holding, okay? So let me see if I can find it. I hope I have it. I think I do. Okay, cool. It's the Green Terra Mystery School activation. So I will load this up onto my YouTube channel so that anybody can access it. It's in my Heal, Awaken, Ascend library, by the way. So it'll really, really help you to understand how to release the illusion of suffering on a soul level. And that's a really important part of this whole process. So I want to see if there's any questions real quick that I can answer. So let me go back to my homepage. Okay. Facebook, you're killing me. I can't really see him. One of my favorites, Green Terra. Me too. Thank you for sharing it, starting it, sharing it. I'm not sure what that says. I can't read it. I think I'm still wrapped up in the structure of another system. I can't read your full comment. I wish I could. Let me see if I can see more here. I think I'm still wrapped up in the structure of another system. Maybe I require to chat with you privately. Yes, I do private sessions, Susan. And this is something that I'm helping some of my clients to kind of figure out right now. Courtney says this is a major key to easing the integration process. I agree. So, ladies, I hope this has found you well and given you lots of good stuff to think about. And I want to wish you a lot of peace and love with this. I know that when you think about this stuff, it can really create an upheaval within you. Once the dust settles, it'll be easier to think about this. Ask your higher self to give you ways to better understand this. Ask your higher self to help you filter this information in the highest and best way for you so you can understand the most of it and receive the best benefits from this at this time. For the highest good of you and the highest good of all, okay? The greatest fear for me was that I get unlimited power and I could do whatever I want. Listening to you, I feel that it's much about giving up suffering and knowing and getting what I really want because I have the right for it. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, ladies, for being here. I will have that Green Terra meditation up and I will put it in the comments as soon as I get that up, okay? We'll be talking more about this as soon as I gather my thoughts and think about the next phase of talking about this. So thanks for all of you who are watching live. Thanks for watching the replay. Love and peace. Bye-bye.